Russia threatens more strikes as the war in Ukraine seems close to a new turning point. The escalation came after the bombing of the Kerch Bridge, linking Russia's mainland to the Crimea. Kyiv is now seeking more military aid. So what direction will this war take next? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tom Mcrae. Russia launched a wave of missile strikes on several regions of Ukraine this week, killing at least 20 people. The capital, Kyiv, was among cities targeted for the first time in months. Ukraine's military says it shot down 41 of 75 missiles, but that wasn't enough to stop the destruction. Its energy minister says Russian missiles have hit around 30% of the country's electricity infrastructure over the past few days. Around 300 areas were knocked off the power grid. The mayor of the western city of Lviv says it will take months to repair energy facilities there. Well, those strikes happened in response to an attack last week on the Kerch Bridge linking Crimea to the Russian mainland. Russia's security service says it's arrested 8 people. Its federal security service says the blast was organised by Ukraine's military intelligence service. The explosion destroyed a section of the bridge. Kyiv hasn't said whether it was involved. And G7 leaders held a virtual meeting to discuss what they called their unwavering commitment to Ukraine. They promised they would hold Russian President Vladimir Putin to account for the missile attacks. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky asked the group to supply Kyiv with air defence weapons. He's described it as his #1 priority now.
I thank you for all the help already provided. It is big, it is significant, but the Russian leader, who is now in the final stage of his reign, still has room for further escalation. This possibility is a threat to all of us, but we can overcome this threat. We have a formula for peace. And now, reacting to Russian terror, sham referenda and the attempt to annex our territory, we can apply the peace formula so that the terrorist state stands no chance.
Well, let's bring in our guests now. In Strasbourg, Oleksiy Goncharenko. He is a member of the Ukrainian Parliament and the Ukrainian delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. From Geneva, Alexandre Vautravers, Editor-in-Chief of Swiss Military Review and Security and a defence policy analyst. And from Moscow, Andrey, Baklanov, Vice Chair of the Association of Russian Diplomats and a former Russian ambassador to Saudi Arabia. A warm welcome to you all. Thank you very much for being on the programme. Let's first begin with what's happened so far before we move on to how things might play out from here. Just in regards to the latest strikes on Ukraine over the last 48 hours or so, Andrey, I'd like to begin with you. The Russian Ministry of Defence said the goal of these strikes was achieved and, to quote, all designated objects were hit. So can you explain one missile hitting a children's playground in Kyiv? Was that a designated object? Was it a legitimate target?
Well, actually, of course, the targets this time were only the major electricity and other infrastructure objects on the territory of Ukraine. It was the retaliation for the incident we had in the Kerch Bridge. But also, I would like to say that it was not this bridge accident. It was not the only cause for the new attack, large-scale attack of Russian Federation, because there were many, military people and many ordinary people in the Russian Federation that were criticizing our military operation for developing a very slow speed. You know, we're saying that it was necessary to make dynamics for this operation, and it was another, visible cause for the decision taken by the president of the Russian Federation to attack this large-scale major electricity and other infrastructure objects on the territory of Ukraine. As far as the, well, of course, it was not meant to kill the innocent people, but everything can happen in the war. When it's a war, of course, the people are well, if not targeted, but they are the victims of the situation. So it could happen, of course. It's a sad story of the war.
Okay.
But well, I was about to say that it was unintentionally, but each day, intentionally, the Ukrainian side are attacking Donetsk Republic and other regions in which many people are dying each day till now, and they are making this intentionally. That's the bad side of the story, unfortunately.
Okay, Oleksiy, your countrymen and women are living through these airstrikes. Many who haven't been attacked in months, like Kyiv and Lviv, haven't had airstrikes since near the beginning of the war. So how difficult is it watching on, and has it rattled the public there, do you think?
First of all, I want to add to what I heard. 19 people were killed. No one of them is army officer or soldier. So very interesting designated military targets Russia has. Russia is a terrorist state, that's all. And Putin is weak to win over Ukrainian army. So he takes revenge on Ukrainian women and children in civilian residences in peaceful cities. That's the reality. For sure, we are very much concerned about what had happened, because that was a brutal attack on the civilian infrastructure, energy infrastructure. It's very interesting to listen that it was a retaliation for something. For what? Russia is making war against Ukraine from 2014, then full-scale invasion from February 24. So what retaliation they are looking for? They just making colonial aggressive war, that's all. But yes, people are concerned, but Putin hoped that this will cause panic in Ukraine, but it's not the case. Ukrainians are already prepared. We know with whom we deal. We understand that for us it's existential. Putin wants wipe out Ukraine from the map of the planet. He is committing genocide, and Russia is committing genocide against Ukrainians on occupied territories. So we are not panicking. We understand, we are confident in our victory. So we are rebuilding everything we need, and for sure we're addressing to our partners and allies to provide Ukraine with more weaponry to stop this terrorism.
Okay, Alexander, do you think that these latest strikes in Ukraine are about hitting legitimate military targets, or is it about scaring the Ukrainian population?
Allow me to remain neutral after these two series of comments. I'll just remind you of what international law and the Geneva Conventions say. Targeting deliberately civilian infrastructure or critical infrastructure such as sewage installations or electrical power plants that are going to be necessary for the livelihood and health of civilian populations of non-combatants is technically a war crime. So I can only stress that it is very and most unfortunate that such collateral damage has taken place. What I do see with regards to the latest strikes from Russia is two things. First of all, both sides are now extending the battle and the fighting very, very much deeper into the land, the territory far away from the front lines. The Ukrainians are doing this because their advances, either in the north or in the south, is now closer and closer to the Russian border, and they are targeting logistical supply for Russian forces. And on the other side, Russia is now targeting targets or infrastructure that is deep within Western Ukraine, because Russia feels that this is where the Ukrainian army is building up and training its conscripts and receiving new war equipment. So I can only say that both sides are actually extending the area that they are striking with their long-range weapons.
OK, let's take it back a step to, I guess, what brought on these latest round of airstrikes, the attack on the Crimea bridge, the Kerch Bridge. Now, Andrey, Russia claimed this bridge was impenetrable to attack. It was a jewel in Putin's crown. So what happened and how embarrassing is this to Russia?
Well, actually, it's unpleasant occasion, and I'm sure that the necessary measures will be taken, though, of course, the relevant people are under criticism now. But, I think that what we can expect, we expect that in 2 months' time there will be a real change of the situation, and we expect that there will be the beginning of the new stage of the development of the military affairs. Now what the aviation did and artillery did, I mean, this 30% of damage to the electricity, this is the warning, and this is the start of the new, new kind of the much more scaled operation. But the main operations will be not now, but no less than 2 months time, when we will have the regiments coming to the territory. I would like to say that we call this operation the liberation of Ukraine, exactly as we liberated Ukraine many years ago from Nazi, but mainly Nazi of European origin, or German origin, but now we liberate once more. But the quantity of the troops that liberated at the Second World War was 23 times more than the quantity of the troops we have now. We started with very a limited number of the troops, which were much less than the rather good trained troops of the Ukrainians. So far, there was a very limited scale of the operations, but it might be that the scale will be more in the months to come.
OK. Well, you know, Russia has said that Ukrainian security services are responsible for blowing up the Crimea bridge. Alexander, Putin's called it an act of terror. What do you think happened? How do you think this bridge was attacked so successfully?
You know, one of my fields of study in academia was military and political incidents. And what I can say is it will take some months and perhaps years in order to figure out what exactly happened. What we can say is that the official story that has been told of a truck carrying explosives and producing this kind of damage, this official version does not hold up. The munitions that were necessary in order to produce this kind of damage are either large bombs, we are talking about several hundred kilos, or we are talking about deliberate special forces attacks. So whatever has effectively happened in order to cut that bridge, the official story that we have been told of a truck blowing up is not correct. In any case, Ukraine has now demonstrated on at least 2 occasions that they have the ability to strike deep behind the lines of Russian troops. And this is extremely worrisome for the Russian war effort, because the train, for example, that caught fire, that was stuck for more than a day on this particular bridge, was carrying 1.6 million liters of fuel. This is the kind of fuel that is necessary to sustain military operations in the south, in the Kherson region, for 2 days. So definitely what we can expect very soon is to see Ukrainian troops mount offensive in the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson area to try and gain an advantage from the stalling of the Russian forces in the south.
OK, let's just move on slightly to what Ukraine is asking for now. The G7 and NATO are discussing what more it can do to help Ukraine. Oleksiy, In fact, NATO Secretary General has said it was a top priority. So how heartening is it to hear that help is on the way, and what exactly are you asking for? Are you getting enough?
Yeah, first of all, we are very thankful for all support we are receiving. And answering your question, is it enough? Well, the answer is very simple. Enough will be when there will be final victory on the battlefield. That will be enough. And today we have a unique window of opportunity. What I mean, if Ukraine in the end of March would have weaponry that we have today, HIMARSs, howitzers, then everything, all this war would be finished in spring. Because when Russian forces were retreating from Kyiv after failed blitzkrieg, that was the moment for us to purchase them. But unfortunately, at that moment, we had not with what to purchase them. And then they changed the tactics, replenished, refreshed, started this First World War style warfare, trench war with a lot of artillery, just destroying, putting into rubble Ukrainian cities. Now we have again the moment. If Ukraine today now will receive long-range missiles to HIMARSs, MLRS, tanks, because for the moment we haven't received any one Western tank, we could finish everything in weeks. I really believe in this, because 1, 2, 3 more military defeats, Putin's regime would not survive.
Okay.
After their military catastrophe near Kharkiv, after their catastrophe in Kherson region, this regime is shaking, and this is the moment to finish it.
Okay, Alexander, you're our military expert. Do you agree with that it would be over in weeks if Ukraine got everything it was asking for?
No, I do not believe so, but I believe that both sides have lost tremendous amounts of personnel and in particular materiel. Both sides have lost more than 50% of the equipment with which they have started this confrontation. What we are seeing, however, is that Russia is trying to move military equipment out of its stocks, out of its reserves, to modernize this equipment. It is also mobilizing troops and sending these troops into battle with very, very little training. And on the other side, you have the Ukrainian military forces that have been able to not only stop the Russian advance, but they have been able in several areas to make deep counterattacks, deep strikes within the Russian lines that are now completely destabilizing the front line. So what I would say is that we are seeing the Ukrainian military being refurbished with more and more NATO equipment. And I would not be so optimistic, but I would definitely say that in the spring of next year, the Ukrainian military will not look as it does today. It will have more and more NATO or Western equipment, and also the troops that it has mobilized in February and March. And the volunteers have now received a lot of very good training. And so the balance is now shifting, and the Ukrainian military forces is gaining. It is not only stronger in terms of numbers, but also in terms of quality compared with Russian forces.
Just sticking with weapons, and the most destructive of all nuclear weapons have been talked about more in the last week or so than probably through the rest of the war combined. Now, Joe Biden said the risk of nuclear Armageddon is the highest in 60 years. Andrey, you are in Russia. Do you agree with that statement? Does it feel like we're potentially on the brink of a nuclear war?
Well, actually, we have another vision of the development of the situation. We didn't exploit our military might 100%. Putin said that in strictly military, military attitude, we didn't start the real war activities in Ukraine. It's just a limited operation and no more. But unfortunately, it became some more and more full-scale operation. And as far as scenarios are concerned, of course, the next scenario will be the defeating of the transportation lines, and the promises that the Western countries are giving to the Ukraine, they will not be fulfilled, because if the transportation lines will be annihilated, and there will be no real opportunities to bring big quantities of the troops and the instructors and the big quantities of the military equipment to the land. So far, we did not did this job, and many of our citizens are criticizing the army for such mild manner of the development of the situation. But also, I would like to say something. That what we are discussing now, it's not just the matter of the military operations and political difficulties, but this is a great tragedy for all of us. For instance, for the families like my family is, because I simultaneously belong to the Ukrainian society and the Russian society. So this is, our heart is now under attack, because of the development of the situation. And we are very angry for the leaders which were in 50s and 60s and 70s, and they did not prevent the development of these nationalist tendencies in Ukraine, which gave way to war.
Okay. Before we finish, I just want to talk briefly about diplomacy, because there's been a lot of tough talk, from all sides, especially Ukraine as well. Zelensky said he's not going to negotiate with Putin. Oleksiy, do you think that there is any space at all for negotiations, and when do you think that could begin?
First, Russian representative is saying that they are not using all their might. But the question is, what for in this case? They're making mobilization in their country, from which hundreds of thousands of their men are running away from Russia. That's like apotheosis of their regime, when Russians are running from Russia. So listening about bleeding hearts from what's happening. They are killing us and saying that their hearts are bleeding. Wow, it's something very impressive. Speaking about diplomacy, it's very clear. Putin cut all ways to diplomacy. He destroyed it with this decision to annexate our territories and to announce Ukrainian territories Russian. Nobody in the world accepted this so-called sham referenda. Nobody will ever accept it. And about what we can negotiate today. We will never give up our territories. We can't leave our millions of Ukrainians under genocide. So the only way now for us is to liberate our lands. So we are ready to any negotiations any moment. But about one thing, Russia retreating from our territory. We don't want any inch of Russian territory, but we will never give up any inch of ours.
Does that include Crimea?
For sure, Crimea is Ukraine, internationally recognized by the whole world and by Russia itself. Russia, during these 27 years before attack on Crimea, many times, 23 years, signed documents that they recognize that that Crimea is Ukraine, and they recognized our borders many times. And also they gave us guarantees in 1994 when we voluntarily gave up third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world for the first and last time in human history, under the guarantees that they will never attack us. But you see what does it cost, Russian guarantees.
Indeed. Andrey, just very briefly, Putin's mentioned that he may be open to meeting with the US President Joe Biden. How serious is he, and how likely do you think that is to happen?
Well, actually, it seems to be that this time this will be something real. I mean that the meeting will be there, but I'm not quite sure that the topic of Ukraine will have any positive horizons. The diversity of the positions are there, and now when the situation in the front is very much unstable in each of the side claiming its victory in the future, there is very limited ground for the US and Russian successful negotiations. I think that this kind of unstable situation will prevail in the months to come.
Thank you very much to all our guests, Oleksiy Goncharenko, Alexandre Vautravers and Andrey Baklanov. Thank you very much for being on the programme. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Tom Mcrae, and the whole team here, bye for now.